Very warm welcome to everybody, and really grateful to all of you for making time and attending this webinar. So today's webinar is, of course, part of our Ask an Expert series that we run a specific webinar every month. And in the month of November, it's me with you. So the topic of today's webinar is for you to take you through with the alumni experience functionality that SAP SuccessFactors now have in the product. And this has been released not like very long ago, just 2 release old. So I'm sure everyone who have joined us should be very exciting. I got really excited when this was released for the first time by knowing the functions and feature what it offers, and really looking forward for our SAP team to make further progress and enhancement on the functionalities in the future. Before we start, a little bit about myself. So I'm Sadaf Siddiqui, part of the consulting services at Talent Team. I'm one of the SuccessFactors HSM lead consultant. And I do offer a progressive around 15 years of experience in the HR domain, coming from the on-premises, and have worked on different SuccessFactors module, and that is currently I'm continuing to do. So let's take a look at what are we going to cover in our webinar today. Alumni experience, okay? Why for an organization giving a good experience to the employee who have left the organization is important, and giving them a good experience, what is that it can actually provide you in terms of for your overall business growth. We also going to talk about that what are the key challenges that organizations faces in terms of when the employee leaves the organization, in terms of either making a contact with them, trying to retrieve some information they may have left along with them. So what are those challenges that are there? We also will understand that how important this experience in terms of what kind of opportunities it can create in the organization ecosystem for their employees as well as for the people who are no longer with them. Talking about that, we are going to then take a look at the SuccessFactors Alumni Experience functionality. We're going to take a look at that what is this functionality actually offers as of now. Like I said, this has been released in the product portfolio not very long ago, just 2 years. It's first half of 2025. It's when it was added to the product. Obviously, there are certain functionality that are already there. It does cover all the different persona, I would say, which are essential for the alumni life cycle in the organization, for the alumni itself, for their managers, if your alumni rehires in the organization, then what kind of experience they can expect, and also from the administrative perspective, what is that they can do and cannot at the moment. We also will touch base around in terms of enabling the access so that you can utilize the functionality in the system and be able to use it for your alumni. What are the technical prerequisites and some setup that you need to do before you even can get started to explore it. So that's the overall agenda for our webinar today. And definitely we have reserved some time towards the end of the session to address any questions that you may have. However, feel free during the session, any question that you have, you can drop in the chat. And once we are done with the session, I'll be happy to take all of them. All right. So let's start with what is the importance, significance of giving a good experience to our alumni. Okay. What usually happens is in any organization, and it is something not, I would say, a fictional thought. It is a very ground reality that there is always a more focus, more emphasis, more attraction, and more intention towards when we hire employees, right? So that they should have a good onboarding experience, while they are within the organization, how you can develop them more, how can you ensure that they're meeting their personal goals, objectives, right? However, it is globally that when the employee leaves the organization, uh, I would not say it's strategically, but usually the focus on those set of users reduces. Obviously, there are many reasons why that's not done, but why there is now a growing need that organization should start focusing on the ex-employees as well, right? And here are the key ones which I'd like to talk about is boomerang employees are on the rise. What does it mean? When an employee leaves the organization, they probably go to some external companies or join some other organization. They then acquire some new skills and then they learn about new skills, new way of working. They have a different experience, right? So these are the aspects that they add in their own personality. And then what if they come back to the organization? So you have a complete 2.0 version of the same employee who left the organization. So, and this is one of the usual case at the moment that's happening. People do try to come back to the organization even after they have left, if the experience was really great, if they did receive a good opportunities to grow. However, everyone wants to explore more and more. And that's why one of the reasons that you also have to ensure alumni are a major source of referral. And I'm sure everyone who have joined us today, you would agree that every organization do have a referral programs, right? Where they encourage even their current employees and the employees who are alumni, if in case either through your personal relation or through personal contact, you do try to reach out to somebody who you have already worked, that if we are looking for somebody on this skill set, if you know somebody, then do let us know, which is very usual, right? So if that's the case, then why don't we have a proper channel where we can have an alumni have communicate all this information to us seamlessly? Keeping employer brand strong, which is very important. It's the era of, I would say, everyone having their LinkedIn profile, right? Everything that you post on LinkedIn from your professional profile perspective do matter a lot. And it does matter a lot for the organization as well. So if your employees are giving a good testimonials, if they are providing a good write up about the organization culture, the experience that they have, it does makes a difference because it creates the brand and the face of the organization. So the people who are looking at all those posts, they a lot say they get influence about it, but they get aware about the organization by reading that, right? Obviously there could be reasons where people will take a look at it and everyone can have a different, I would say, sense of experience, but this can make a longer difference in the overall brand building of any organization. Access to the valuable talent ecosystem. So what we are referring here is if we have all your employees information available within the platform, okay? So for SuccessFactors customers, if you have this information available, you can easily identify if there were any subject matter expertise that were working with you and you would like to call them for any of the webinar, seminar, external event that you are planning to organize. You have that information handy with you and you can reach out to them. Because it's not always necessary that if I have worked with somebody and I'm not at this position or organizing that event, somebody else is doing it, so they can also have that information, right? Supporting for the contingent and the gig talent. So obviously this is also very important, where when you have some employees joining in the organization and you do want to probably pick up the users who already worked in the past, right? Because it's a small piece of work. So instead of going outside and trying to hire somebody externally, you may try to reach out to the person who have already worked with you, and what you can do is you can identify if they are available at the moment to pick up that piece of work for you. So you can hire, or I would say you can offer a contingent employment as well to the employees. Improve employee experience. I think everybody here will definitely agree that for the overall experience for a person, does not matter whether the person is just an employee or a contractor, contingent, or they are an alumni. Experience makes a lot of difference, right? And if you can provide them a full seamless experience where when I was the organization, I was able to have access to my information that is very vital for my overall employment. When even I have left the organization, because there's certain information I always want to go back and check because I need that information for my future employment. And then instead of having to reach out to the HR team offline, manually, or visiting the office personally, I can go into the system and have that information handy and be able to download, or I would say at least have that information. So that's experience can make a lot of difference. When it comes to the data insights, I think it is very important for any organization to keep a tab that what is the employment headcount, I would say, how it is flowing in over the year. Do we have more attritions? Do we have more hiring? How it is happening? So obviously keeping this information in the system, how many people you are rehiring, how many who have left the organization and they were, I would say, very critical for the position, but definitely because of few reasons they had to leave. You can actually have all these insight if the data for the alumni itself is maintained in the system. Okay. So these are the aspects I would say in totality can vouch that why setting up a good experience within the platform is essential for the employees who are joining the company after they have left or who have already left, and when you are planning to overall create a good experience for your alumni, right? So yeah, uh, with the previous one, we did talk about all that. That what are the key challenges that organization faces is after the employee left the organization. You definitely do not have a direct contact to those employees. Losing a talent is definitely a very big one, because obviously because of certain opportunities they have decided to take a next step and are working with some other organization, but how can you ensure that you have a track of that talent that you have lost, and then be able to probably in the future, if you have a right opportunity, you'll be able to reach out to them, right, in order to understand if they would like to consider joining the organization again. And obviously people voice is the organization voice. So employees are always at the heart of the business and they can become your brand ambassador. So if you do not have a proper touch with them, then you are actually every year losing your great brand ambassadors. And when it comes to having the alumni information handy with you, it can help you build a strong alumni programs, which actually help you probably identify people even from your ex-employees that they can be targeted. If you want to run some campaign, they can be asked to provide some referrals. They probably can become your customers or even the partners in the future for some projects. And something similar like the brand ambassador, they can also become your industry influencer if they grow further in that direction. Speaking of all that, I think we have set the ground to sort of understand that what is the significance of having a good experience for your employees who leaves the organization and become your alumni. Okay. And so this is definitely well thought. And here, what we are going to talk about is SAP SuccessFactor Alumni Experience functionality. What happened is previously we did not have in the SuccessFactor itself any way for the ex-employees to have even a single opportunity to be able to access the system. That was very strict. We have a person based on their termination date and obviously certain rules or criteria that you define in the system, they lose the access to the system itself. So on the last week of, take this example, on the last week of my employment, I was definitely busy with, for an example, somebody who is leaving the organization is very occupied with the offboarding responsibilities and tasks that they need to perform, and they forgot to sort of take a dump of their employment documents, their pay slips, their letters of compensation, right? So they are left with only one option. They reach out to the HR team, and then HR team will need to try to track all that information and be able to hand it over. And usually, in the usual world, what happens is they are obviously, once they resign, they are always asked that before you leave the organization, ensure that you have the access of all your employment document. If you do not, you request that to be provided, right? So all these things usually happen. However, this creates at times not a very good, nice to have experience. And like it's highlighted here, it can lead to some kind of annoyances, or it can also lead to some kind of disconnect in terms of the experience is not good, and it can leave a long lasting experience, right? And we don't want that to happen. That's why this experience is now here in place. So what it does is, and what kind of changes it has brought is, there is a specific role that is called an alumni role, a default role, or I would say standard role. It's now available into the system, which can be utilized to set up the access or authorization for those users who are your alumni to be able to have access to some of their personal information and the payroll related information as well. Obviously, there are some technical prereq. I'm going to talk about that later in the webinar today. But what is that you must have in order to have the alumni role accessible and in use in the platform? But here, further to talk about. So, this experience, what it actually offers is, it's creates a fantastic digital platform. For what purposes? Where you can continue to have a good relationship or connection maintained with your former employees, right? It definitely uh, encourage opportunities, right? And opportunities in what sense? I've given a very good example that somebody leaves the organization for XYZ reason. They will have a different kind of experience when they work on other organization. And then they would realize, obviously, that's something a human trait when you realize something and then you'd like to come back to the previous organization. So it can generate opportunities for you to rehire your alumni, and that will help you save additional cost which you might spend by looking at some external candidate or somebody else as opposed to somebody who has already worked with you, because you have to, it's not the, I would say, a financial cost. When an employee leaves the organization, it's a higher loss that's just a financial cost, right? And then definitely it helps you to build a talent rich engaged alumni community. I'm sure the community within the organization matters a lot for various purposes. Within the employee, we know we can you can have community of practice around learning. You can have a community practice about any specific function, but you also would like to have your community of your all the alumni so they can keep in touch with them. They can also share their own experience. They can bring experience on the platform where you can also have all those experience witness. Okay. Here, what I'm presenting here is a very summarized way of that. You must be wondering that how the experience that kicks in, at what stage usually the alumni or a person who left the organization will become an alumni and be able to start having this experience in the system. This starts with definitely your offboarding processes, right? So once you have your employee who are leaving the organization, their offboarding processes are initiated. There's some information you always have to maintain, and then this experience can start for them. So it's definitely an organization call. You may not want to give everybody alumni access to your SuccessFactor platform. You probably may take a call that, and it's a strategic decision. Technically, it's possible. Anyone who have left the organization terminated does not have access to the system can become alumni, but not essentially everyone who was part of your SuccessFactor platform or user base has to have an alumni role or access after they leave. It's totally your call. Once that decision is made, then definitely there are rules that can be set up which can help you activate this access for those set of users automatically. It's not something that you have to manually manage it. You can enable that access activation through writing the rules. Once that happens, that people will become an alumni, they receive an activation email that your alumni account has been enabled, because now alumni can authenticate through the Identity Authentication Services, right? So they can receive an email like they receive an for organizations who are currently managing externals in LMS. You know that for externals in learning, they always receive a activation email, and then they can access the system through the site. This is something is going to be from the process wise same, where the IAS will send out the email activation emails, right? And then they'll know. Obviously, there are certain data needs or prerequisite for system to automatically send out these emails, and it is highlighted over here that you have to ensure that for all your employees, you do have their email addresses maintained, and you also should have their personal email addresses maintained. This is for the purpose, the reason we are it's highlighted here being having a personal email address also maintained, because some organization what they do is once the employee leaves the organization or based on their termination date, their access to the official email addresses all are restricted, right? So you can probably then utilize a personal email to send out these activation email, or you can retain their email addresses and then extend the access further. Before going forward, before I would talk about that how the different persona features that the experience offer for employee, for manager, for HR managers, and for administrators. Here is the very quick list about the technical enablement. And this slide talks about that if you need to utilize or use the alumni experience in the SuccessFactor platform, obviously you should be the SuccessFactor customer, and you should have the offboarding module. You should have Employee Central. So obviously the customers who are not using currently Employee Central, this is something obviously you cannot do it. So you need to have offboarding, Employee Central. There are certain features that the experience provide for the payroll related information, where the person can access their payslip and some of the payroll related other information. For that, you have to have an Employee Central payroll module enabled and in use in your SuccessFactor portfolio. And obviously, the authentication happens through the IAS, and SuccessFactor platform should be integrated with that. IAS comes with the IPS, so I'm sure you are aware of that. There are certain requirement from the profile perspective, because when somebody access the profile as an alumni, right, for them to be able to have access to their people profile, the requirement is that you should have the latest people profile enabled. It does not currently supported with the legacy one, which I understand and I'm sure you do as well, because after the latest profile has been launched, any enhancement related to the legacy one hasn't been happening, right? And also and the last one is very specific for the HR managers when they are actually, or admins, when they are looking for the users. You should have a way to clearly identify which one are your alumni and which are your current employee. So that setting also needs to be enabled so that it will show an indicator. The process itself starts you enabling the feature itself within the onboarding module. So I'll not get into the technicality of showing where the setting actually sits, but it is within the onboarding global configuration settings. Under the general setting, this feature is available. Obviously, provide that you have an offboarding module as well, and then you can enable, and from there on, you can actually start setting it up. You need to set up some email, you need to set up some business rule, and then you'll be able to utilize it. Obviously, you can set up a role-based permission for employees as well. Moving on, what we're going to do is I'll take you through with for each persona, right? What is that the experience offer? And here is the very first persona, which is your former employees. It creates a secure digital workplace. And here is a all the key ones that I wanted to highlight, that what you can allow your alumni to have access to, right? So once their alumni profile is activated after they leave the company, I think the default activation happens after 2 days from termination date. I think that's the default. So somebody left the organization or the last working day, the termination date was 24th of November. And if they were set up or they qualify to have access to the alumni profile, they will have their alumni profile or account activation email 2 days after 24th November, which should be 26th. Once they have it, they will activate their profile and they'll be able to log into SuccessFactor. Obviously, the alumni profile, the role itself is configurable. And at the moment, in terms of the support, there are only few parts of the SuccessFactors suite that support, right? So obviously, what you see here is the personal information they can access. They can access their biographical information, the address, if there were any contact information that's maintained with their previous employment, emergency contact, dependent information, and the payment related information as well, right? On the right side, what you see is I've highlighted that if organization also have employee central payroll module, then you can allow your employees to also be able to download the payroll information, which is the main one is if they have any tax related forms, their pay slips, their promotion letters, their compensation letters, they'll be able to download them handy. Okay. Customers who are already have the work zone, right? So WorkZone also have been upgraded with the two standard cards, and those cards are relevant for where I can look at my if there are any offboarding tasks that I need to complete, and also I'll be able to access my alumni workplace. You can also create a unique experience for all your alumni by setting up a specific cards on the SuccessFactor homepage. And this is something is achievable. There is a criteria added when you create a card, that you can also allow people to have access to those cards after they left based on their termination date, which is what is mentioned here. So what happens is after the lease, you do want to, for all your alumni, when let's say you are running an event for all your alumni community, right? You do want to publish about that. You can set up that card on the homepage, have all the information added there. If they need to register to in sort of to attend that event, you can provide the link to register on that card itself, and the card will display depending on the so what you want to do is definitely for this event you want to target people who have left the organization in the past 2 years, so you can set up the criteria for the card accordingly, set the days, and then people will be able to see it. What happens when you would like to rehire the people, right, as part of their alumni experience? Okay, which is also termed as a smart hiring, because when you rehire somebody who's already worked with the organization, it saves a lot of efforts and the other aspects as well. Here is the clear differentiation between, so obviously when you rehire people, you either rehire them on their old employment or you rehire them on a new employment. Depending on the different scenarios, the experience will vary. And here depending on the information that we have so far from SAP, this is how it will differentiate. So if we talk about the identification and eligibility, that who can access and who cannot and what they can access. So obviously, how they're identified when you are running a rehire process, because you have retained their email information, right? And then it will appear as a match. Okay, they will have their alumni access enabled because you have created or activated their alumni profile. So as a hiring manager, I can say, yes, this person was the ex-employee and currently he does have access to the alumni profile or alumni role in the system. There is a technical indicator which is called visible in profile match verification. It does appear for them as well. Okay. When it comes to the account conversion, so you might be wondering that what will happen if we rehire the person. So person was an employee. When the person left the organization, becomes an alumni, so he has alumni role in the system. And then when you're rehiring them, then person will again become what? Their onboarding. So that's how the role conversion happened. In the conversion itself, their access details, the credential are retained. They can still access their onboarding portal to the same credentials. And obviously, based on the information that we have, when you are rehiring somebody on the old employment, they do receive the activation email. However, when you're hiring on the new employment, the IS will not send any activation email. What will happen is the onboarding module, the usually what happens when you hire somebody, they receive the activation email from the onboarding module, and that's how it will follow continuously. In terms of the permissions and access after they have logged in into the system, right? Uh, Behavior perspective, what does it say is when we are rehiring on an own employment, whatever you had access as an alumni, right? And whatever you need to have access on body, both the accesses are merged. So technically, you have both. It's not that on body access will override or alumni access will supersede. Both the permission or authorizations are combined, and you have that on the system. However, when somebody is rehired on a new employee and he was an employee alumni, so that person's alumni access will no longer work. They will just be an onboardee in the platform, right? Because consider it that they'll be a fresh hire, but you are hiring actually the same person. Okay. And hence there is no alumni access retained. So I won't, or that person won't be able to go back and access the information from their previous employment. However, with the old employment, they'll be able to do it. Um, so in terms of the experience from the user side, right, they will have access to their previous employment record. However, the new employment one will not have that. So it's like as mentioned here, it's a clean slate. So you are hiring somebody again, but on new employment, so they cannot have access to their employee profile, and which makes sense. What happens is we don't, I think logically how I understood is this is something needed in sort of to create a clean experience for the users, so they don't get confused that what is that I have seen in the system when I was an employee, what is that I could see in the system when I'm just an employee, what is that I can see now or access in the system when I have become employee but on a different employment or on the same employment, right? In terms of the access period, so obviously when alumni access is active, and when you are hired you become onboardee, right? If your onboarding is cancelled, so you were about to onboarded but it was cancelled, so your access will revert to your alumni access. It will not happen that you will continue to have that. And when your alumni access is expired, then obviously you become either terminated or you loses the access. It will happen like that. So that's how the experience will flow. So that's for from the end user perspective, right? So well, I'm just an employee or when I'm going through the rehiring phase, then there are different type of experience happen. Now, what's in it for the hiring managers, right? So there are a few things that our hiring manager also can easily access as part of this experience that they can utilize and be able to identify the alumni users easily. What happens is their names and the email addresses of alumni users. So in the offboarding dashboard, their names and their access, whether they have alumni access or not, it appears very clearly, right? So I can know that this person has already have access to the alumni portal and then be able to access this. Okay. At any given point in time, this status indicates the person can access the previous employment information or not, right? And probably with that, you can take a call if it says expired, and if the person will try to reach out to you, you may probably reach out to the team who is managing the alumni access and we ask them to extend that person access for at least for next 7 days or 2 days so that they can complete their offboarding task, and any information that they want to access and be able to take a download from the system, the personal employment information, they'll be able to do it, right? And during the onboarding and offboarding process, uh, the admins also can look at that if when you are trying to probably hire a alumni user, right, whether the person matches the verification or not. So this person is an alumni and it is appropriate for the current opening or a position. There is also an indicator now available, and this is for when admins try to search for the user. So there has to be way. The first of all, obviously, this can be easily permission control whether admins should be allowed to see the alumni users or not, because now you have that specific role available. So you can add that role into the target population, and then accordingly, the admins be able to see the alumni, yes or no. Okay. When it comes to the administrators, right? So there are, I think, many things that the admins now can do, because when it comes to managing the overall alumni persona in the system, then you have to be able to manage few additional things. So as you see here, um, obviously the very first thing that starts with configuring the business rule, and that rule is required to define, first of all, which category of ex-employee should be allowed to have access to the alumni role, right? And then once you have that decision for how long they should have from their date of termination, they should have like for the next 3 years, they should have for next 30 days, depending on the group of users, you can define that, right? And this experience at the moment is not for you to contact with the alumni and be able to create a conversations. I think the work zone is the better place for that, but to give them access to the platform so that anything that the admins or the HR team are currently managing with the ex-employee offline, right? uh, be it providing them information about their previous employment, trying to extract some information from the system, downloading it manually and sending it over to them over email. All that tedious work also can easily go away if you can start enabling the alumni persona in the system for your users. Okay. Then definitely whoever needs to have access to that, they can be easily welcomed with a nice welcome email that your alumni access has been enabled. And if you would like to have download their payroll information and have access to the previous employment information, you need to go to this link, set up your credentials, and be able to they'll be able to log in, right? And you can customize all those email notifications as well. They are all are supposed to be at the moment, because IS sends out the notifications. So you have to configure these notification on the IS side. Okay. Consent statement, very important. From the data protection perspective, you also need, I would suggest one of the good one that you should ideally be setting it up for the ex-employees while they're accessing system as an alumni. You can set up a separate consent statement that does not need to be something which you may have set up for your internal employee. You can have a different one for that, and they can always acknowledge that. From the IP restriction perspective, I think organizations who do have applied some IP restriction from the system access perspective, you can also exclude alumni from that, because obviously they'll be not on your organization network. They'll be accessing the system externally. And the last one here on the list, which I think I did talk about already, if you want to create a good homepage or a personalized homepage specific to the alumni group of users, then you do have a flexibility to set up those cards, and then be able to set the access duration based on the termination date, and you should be able to do it. Here on the slide, there are some screenshots that I've grabbed, the information that is available from the SAP already, that this is something how the email can look like when somebody will receive an email about their activation for the alumni access, right? And then when you do take a look at that person, then you can easily find by their user type whether the person is alumni or not, right? And for the IP restrictions, and also when you are creating a consent statement, you do have an option to choose the alumni role, the standard role, and then it will apply only for those users only. Here you don't have to set up any rule in order to identify what are those group of users. With that, I think we have come to a stage where I'd like to quickly talk about the key takeaways. So, by looking at everything which is currently offered as part of that functionality, right? It looks great. And definitely, I'm sure some of the organization have already started exploring it, may have currently in a pilot to probably implemented it in their live system. But this is something I would say it has it is a beginning where it is now have started filling the gap, uh, to so that there can be a meaningful relationship connection can be established with the employees from the platform perspective. Obviously, process wise, every organization have a process, but how can you digitize that experience? And that's where this experience can really help. And obviously, when it comes to the experience, it should not matter whether it's the person is your employee or a contingent, or that person is an ex-employee. The experience should remain consistent, and I think that creates actually the actual brand of any organization and the face value. It's definitely going to help organization to reduce the admin overhead, some friction like it's highlighted here, to create more smoother, easier, digitized, connected process for alumni as well, right? So that's the key takeaway I would say. I would like to highlight after having the opportunity to talk about with this functionality with all of you. So that's the end of the webinar. Before I hand it over back to Elisa to sort of wrap up our today's webinar, I'd like to highly encourage. We have another webinar happening 11th of December by Sandeep and Donald from SAP. So if you are interested to know about how the job architecture and the career framework within the SuccessFactor platform and the process wise, it can be easily fixed. They are going to share a fantastic, I would say, insights around these areas. So feel free to join. We have this here on the slide. If you want to register, you can just scan the QR code and be able to register, or you can visit our company's website and be able to enroll yourself. All right. Think that's that. I'm going to stop sharing and I want to take a look at Elisa. Do we have any questions? Let's check.
No questions at the moment.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Sadaf, and thank you, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed it and found this webinar insightful. Keep an eye out as we will be sending you all a copy of today's webinar very soon. And yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sadaf. Hope you all have a lovely day.
Thank you so much.